Hello, everybody, and welcome to our line of duty. We know there might be a certain bit of news this week, but we're going to cover that on Wednesday. So today's
Yeah.
line of duty, our usual scheduled stream for you all.
Yeah.
And hello to Darren.
Uh,
Who else is in the chat?
y- and OG and who is that? I think we've got a new person point
To
to
pool
front row.
front row. So
Awesome.
welcome if you're new.
Yeah, that's a bit of that's a bit of and I think we've actually lost our viewers for a second.
Have we? I can't see anything like when it comes to numbers. Could just be YouTube having a bit of a funny moment.
Yeah. So, welcome guys. Hold on and I'll check if you're still live because this is weird.
It says in the top corner we're live. Have YouTube done like a ghost? That doesn't usually happen to small channels like us.
Yeah, it still says we're live in YouTube, but hold on to check.
Technical difficulties, folks. They do like us. We had a fun with emails before we went live.
Yeah, but still live, but we've been ghosted, so we'll carry on anyway. So,
If you're in the chat, keep chatting. That might make YouTube realise something. Yeah,
yeah,
Wendy's just commented. So people, they're still in the chat. So just carry on and hopefully.
yeah, so we're on episode number 4, Water
Yeah,
series 2, so by this point in the series, I'm starting to see the story akin to full year and repeat episode to the news of the series to come after the as felt like there'll be a break in scheduled programming as we're doing an special, but we'll get to all of that
hi
and
Sudoku.
we'll get to all of that and because we both have a lot to say, but right now right now I'll ask I'll let her initial thoughts on this episode before we get into character development and story ideas. And by the way, we've got 7 options, so the audience numbers have gone up and what was from the Octa chats
Hi
just
Lord.
popped
It's nice to
in.
have some new names in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
so
what did I think?
yeah,
I think this is a nice episode for a lot of loose strands. I think they did a
yeah,
yes. Last episode was a bit of here's some big moments. Here's some
yeah,
sort of big like oh what's going to happen next sort of things. I think this episode was sort of a couple of the big strands are now sort of coming together in the Carly case. I think a lot happens with Dryden this episode. You see a lot of sort of the unraveling of him start.
yeah,
And also Denton, I think, as well. You see even AC now, I think, by the end of this episode, are starting to realise that maybe Denton wasn't the right person to put away. So it's a lot of interesting threads, I think, this episode, if I were to sort of summarise it.
Yeah. And that's pretty much my thoughts as well. You get some good performances here from Gerard, from Mark Bonaro's Gerard, and of course there's, by the way, one of my favourite actors.
Boyfriend!
Moment in the UK because he's done as previously he said he's done a lot about Irish audios that I've listened to. So yeah,
And he's
so,
Scottish.
yeah,
It does help a bit with Daniel, as you might have noticed.
yeah. Again, I'm very patriotic. To put it in my own
I don't know how he cooks for me.
Yeah. Right, so right, so to start on is awful. It's a kind of a bit sort of strange why that you would start it off at Steve's and Phil. Because because here's my initial thoughts whenever I start solely watch to the episode because I initially thought when I first saw that the episode would be going to pick up you know how if stuff in episode 3 where they goes and visits him in the prison, so I felt that was kind of a sort of strange sort of tag to start off to start Eves and Power. Because I'm not sure we thought the story was going to pick back up as well or after the prison. Is it?
Yeah, and I
What
think,
did you think?
well, I think with Steve, I think it's interesting that
Yeah.
I think you obviously had the moment of her sort of pleading her innocence to him and him
Yeah.
being a lot more receptive than Kate was. And I think they're doing a very slow burn. That's the vibe I got. And obviously with hindsight now you can see what they're doing a bit. But I do think this is them almost trying to slowly put a few like hints that Steve, and it's shown throughout the episode, he's starting to have doubts now. And I think it's a nice little sort of mirror because you also see Denton in her cell. So I think it's to almost sort of mirror them a little bit each other.
Yeah.
And then it's also to sort of show he is having a relationship with the detective. That's also what it's doing. It's showing you that he's been Steve and he's flirting and he's but at least he's not a witness this time. Just a co-worker.
Yeah, but I would say kind of a rival sort of co-worker though, because there's a bit of friction between Fourth Street Station and the anti-corruption side of
Yeah, hello
so
Jim. That's a new
yeah,
name as well, so hello Jim.
Jim Never, I can who I have actually streamed with before over in PJ's
Oh, hello.
channel.
Anyway.
He says he's told me before that he has actually went back the previous streams and his comment and his comment and his first comment was actually saying that he's finally hit it for a live stream. So good to finally have you in the chat.
It is. Oh,
Uh,
and a certain somebody's just popped up. Hello, Lee.
yeah, yeah, hello. Long time no see.
Yeah, so yeah, and so you've seen Steve in his flat, and then you've seen obviously him with this detective. I always forget her name, which is bad. But then,
Roger, I think that's
yeah,
the only name here. You don't actually hear of name
no.
actually.
So that's why I always probably
Name.
forget her name. I just like, oh, she's Steve's like love interest a bit for this series.
Yeah,
But then Denton gets given something while she's eating.
yeah. Oh yeah, and the kind of post-it so she gets it underneath her chair, right, and it just says written on the post-it note.
Yeah, so it's another little ominous moment with her in the prison.
Yeah, so yeah, so we get back to so we get back to Arnett, Orton, and Phil, um, are in, and they suggest to actually interview interview Gerard, but Hastings is a bit skeptical because he says it's going to be on the line, uh, and
Well, yeah, it's a bit of that, and this is an interesting episode for Hastings. Actually, I think
yeah,
it feels like he was sort of a bit of the focus of the main three this episode
yeah,
because you also see him talk with his wife, and that's an interesting conversation, and it sort of lays sort of the groundwork for why he's acting the way he does in this episode because he tells his wife that basically, or he basically hints at her very strongly, doesn't he? That, oh, my boss is sort of giving me the wink for promotion. So he's sort of, he knows if he can keep Dryden on side, it can benefit him personally. And he sort of
yeah,
even has like a brochure, doesn't he, for a cruise to say like, look, and we also do get a bit more information as to why they're so estranged, don't we? It's more than just money.
yeah,
It's the fact that he didn't tell her he was basically risking all the money or this big chunk of money and then he lost it. So you get
yeah,
the vibes for her. It's a mixture of losing that much money and getting them into serious trouble, and the trust is what I got from it, of him
yeah,
sort of behind her back doing it, and that's what made her have to sort of walk away almost.
yeah. See, Um, it's interesting the way you say that because in the first half of the episode is very Hastings heavy, but the second half of the episode's more heavily focused on ending. So it's an interesting angle the way that they've produced this
Yeah,
episode.
and it's interesting then because later on you can see his team, Steve, and I think it is mainly Steve, but Dot also is being quite chomping almost to get at Dryden, and he's
Yeah,
sort of having to fend them off almost later on. And it's
yeah,
interesting to have that dynamic. It's almost like his team's working too hard for him. Like if it was any other
yeah,
copper, he'd be like, "Yeah, go for it." But because it's Dryden and this possible like wink, wink, I could give you a promotion. It's like where does his
yeah,
loyalties lie almost? So it is interesting how Ted is written and played very well. I do
yeah,
think this is a really good episode for Adrian actually.
yeah. Yeah, I know it. think that this is his best performance overall, though, if you really think about it, though, because he's given a bit more to he's given a bit more to actually do in this episode. 'Cause he's sort of played second fiddle so far to the other three this series if you really think about it.
Yeah, and it's sort of as soon as the financial situation got flushed out, I think that gave you a
Yeah,
hint that we're going to get a lot more of Ted this series. And I do
yeah,
think, but there were hints in the first series, if you really look at the way he was acting, that he wasn't this like perfectly good guy. But I think now it
yeah,
is the Jed and the producers are all especially trying to give him a lot more depth, and that he's
yeah,
not just a boss. He's
yeah,
got issues, he's got complications, he's got a history.
yeah. So, yeah, so, because so Hastings is quite impartial and Richard Akers from the previous couple episodes to kind of question him and his um, him and his sort of role in the case basically, but Arnott kind of says Arnott kind of says hang fire, give us help before hours to but and to but and us and question although we'll come back to that a bit later on in
Yeah,
the episode.
and but we know why Steve's acting like that now, and that's what
Yeah,
I do think this. It's almost a bit of a sub theme in this episode of
yeah,
loyalty and like whose loyalty where lies where almost, and who's willing to protect who,
yeah.
because that almost seems to be a bit of a theme to me. That maybe they didn't know they were doing it, but it came across in the episode to me.
So the enter, so the enter of the giraffe, so the interview dragged in, but like because because he's a deputy chief and constable, he can't um um you can't exactly provide the usual um providing um the opportunity to be questioned by a rank superior his own, so they end up having to call the chief and constable to sit on the on of the year because that procedure happen. You can't happen.
Yeah, and it's like the
What's
way
in
Dryden's
going on?
acting almost like
Yeah,
it's a subtle thing, but like they don't give him a drink, do they? He walks in and like pours
yeah,
himself a drink, and like the other Steve and Ted and everybody. So it's like as soon as he's in the room, he's basically showing my rank means I'm higher than everybody here, and he's sort of you
yeah,
get the vibe of he enjoys having that rank. He enjoys being able to show his
yeah,
superiority almost. And throughout the whole
yeah.
interview, he's incredibly sarky, and he's sort of like very off the cuff with them, isn't he?
Yeah. Because yeah, because as well, every sort of question is asked can either me or Steve Orton over like his like have you guys not been trained
Yeah, it's
and my
very
big eyes
demeaning,
not
isn't he?
very
And the
careful.
actor does that quite well, Mark, doesn't he? Because we've sort of said before, if you don't know him, if you're American, he tends to play bad guys in the UK. This actor,
Yeah,
he can do light, but he's known for playing not very nice people. And you can see in this scene actually, he's sort of very good at almost not shouting, but just with the tone of his voice showing how much he's not happy. He sort of
yeah,
almost growls at them.
yeah, it's a stereotypical Scottish sort of thing. They always hit him. They always pull him out, and we always put him in bad guys. So to be
You have
honest,
some good Scottish police in telly. You had Rebus. You had Taggart.
yeah, but the only reason why you know about Rebus is because I told you about
No,
Rebus.
I used to watch that when I would. Or my family used to. That's a better way to phrase it. My family used to watch that show.
Oh, alright, okay, fair enough.
Even though my mum is terrible at understanding Scottish accents, I never understood why she watched it. For that
Oh,
reason.
oh, Jesus should get on there with me.
Oh, she wouldn't understand the word you say. Like, not she no. Yeah, but it's interesting that they do bring up the whole order of no backup, no firearms, don't they, to him? To
Yeah,
basically say, did Lindsay, when she's, because he admits to getting contacted by Denton, doesn't he?
yeah.
But they then ask him, did she mention that? Because that's what got the officers killed. And he says, no, she never mentioned. And I never gave
And
permission for her not to have that.
yeah, and I think where with regards to his I had overheard a conversation because it was Eve that said it was Eve that said um Mike Owen yelling I to and ask and ask them about the phone calls after and as evidence for the case, but he's also but he was also asked about this speed camera incident isn't
Yeah,
there.
that's what they sort of started with. And I think that was typical
Yeah,
go low, sort of go with something that he probably knows he's going to be questioned about.
yeah,
But then what's it's like I said, it's interesting because Hastings is almost trying to keep it to that, isn't he? But Kate and Steve are like trying to basically, whenever they can, sort of railroad almost or make the interview go more to Denton and the accusation.
yeah.
And it's like whenever they do that, he has a sarky response, and even by the end, I think Ted is purposely almost stopping that inquiry by the end of the interview because he knows that's the tricky one, and he doesn't really want to them to explore
And
it anymore.
and so after the so after the interviews taking place is basically sort of scheduled overflowing
Yeah,
into draw. I didn't about and he says, I'm sorry, sorry for wasted your time and in the whole usual sort of you from and pull or you tell us.
yeah. He even sort of
And
says, "Oh, my team's young, like they're very keen, that they didn't mean anything, almost."
yeah, mhm,
But also, and also, I've got to say, Dot's also interesting in this interview
yeah,
because he's sort of it feels almost, especially when Steve's trying to get inquiries or he's trying to question him, Dot also, it's like they I don't want to say they bully Steve a bit, but it's almost like they join in, or Dot joins in with the sort of sarcastic responses Dryden gives. So he's looking, to me it feels like he's almost a little bit sucking up as well as Ted. Like they're both sort of doing that to some degree.
And yet also there you have to keep an eye on his facial expressions during an interview as well, because what is he trying to
Yeah, it's
get
like
at
whose
here?
side are you on? It's like he flips, doesn't he, from like,
Yeah.
which is what we said, like Cotton's very interesting, and the fact that how he acts actually, it's not a big thing and it's sort of in the background, and you sort of only notice it if you watch it again. Sort of the way he's acting is quite interesting.
Yeah. So yeah. So like so the freedom sort of Argent and his office after of unity and then he basically he says to them and remember I don't remember saying a man and the burgers basically discussing never fall out from them and and from them of you.
Yeah, and it's like before that, there was a scene, and it was another good scene for Agent where you just saw Ted almost collapse into his chair, didn't you? And you
Yeah,
could see the cogs are going to sort of say like, how am I going to deal with this?
yeah.
So when they come barging in, he's just like, how do I stop you kids? Almost that's the vibe I get.
So and so like way on
Oh,
on
little
the
fact, the gruesome twosome, the guards that scolded Denton's hands.
oh yeah,
There's
they've
some new
been
guards.
getting the people. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's a
and
little tiny thing that pops up next. And then,
yeah, and yeah, I have to say, he the Europe recent odds are a bit more sort of sympathetic together.
yeah, well, it doesn't take
So,
a lot more to be more sympathetic than we're going to burn your hands. But yeah,
yeah.
they seem to be actually legit proper guards, don't they?
Yeah.
Not
And
Bentons.
so they so they thought of us so they thought of us go after the exercise the art and then they basically went with the kid and yeah I don't say they will exercise um own because um because it's been recorded altercation.
Yeah, but that's later on, isn't it? So we don't quite
Yeah,
know why they're
yeah,
being a bit more protective of her.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But because at this point you're seeing glimpses of Denton, but not a lot. I would argue almost this is one of the lesser Denton episodes. She's to a degree in this series.
I would kind of disagree
Well,
with
maybe not lesser. I think that there's
that.
her storyline isn't as front and center. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Maybe that's a better way to put it.
yeah.
Because we're now back on to Akers and the husband, and sort of more we get to learn more about Jane and sort of the situation the husband were in and everything.
And um, so so the actual I gets called and but like not by anything else but by the violent crime in it.
Right,
so
idiot.
he,
That's what
oh
we
yeah,
think of him.
yeah, my a favorite character out of this series, and so when it's been discovered that Jamie Kelsey um is aid to with a together and Isaac Ashby.
Yeah, they searched the house, didn't they? They
Yeah.
basically where AC was going to is the impression I got. And Steve
Mhm.
trying to protect Kate said, "Oh, let's just leave that for 24 hours." And
Yeah.
these lot have got in and they found this case hidden, and they've gone
Yeah.
through the financial record, so they also know that Acres, that Jane was getting money. So they've just put two and two together and found the money. And like
Yeah.
they're trying to question the husband, and by the end he can't help it, can he? He's just falling apart almost.
Yeah. But and and but and the only thing that he was with is anonymous with Elder
Yeah, that's what we find
Adele.
out, that he wasn't just so much of an innocent bystander in it. He was getting money, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Hi, Savile. Oh God, I want to murder your name.
So
Scapco?
I've yes, go. I've oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm
Uh,
terrible with names.
yeah,
Ask,
it's
ask
okay,
Sudoku.
so much.
Ask him how much. How long, Sudoku, did it
Yeah,
take me to click your name?
yeah.
Yeah, so
Uh,
the husband
and yeah,
wasn't innocent.
yeah, and it's been discovered he was offered to Burberry to lead it to Yemen. So he's about to, and so he's also about to be charged with a conspiracy to um, a conspiracy to murder. I think the charges. I apologise if I get, I forget
There's
the
a lot
name
of
of the
terms
charge.
in this program. You're all right for forgetting.
Um, so anyway, he gets charged with that. Hold on till I put this comment up. No problem.
Thank you
I
for
hope
dropping by,
you
Lord.
enjoy.
We appreciate it anyway.
Yeah,
And thank you for the like. That does
yeah,
help.
yeah. So so yeah, but I'm still not get a kill. I've seen them with Orton I've gotten Steve sort of observing the interview, but then Orton says the until and if around us is going home. Yeah, and of course and he just walks out in the bedroom and then he can
Yeah, and it's like considering how much he was pally or he was trying to be with Steve. And like I said, that's what's interesting with Cotton. Have fun rendering problem.
yeah have on
Yeah, like considering he was quite pally with Steve, and like I said, during the interview, he was almost joining in at the little
yeah,
sarky comments at Steve's expense, and now you're seeing him quite frustrated with Steve. So it's
yeah,
sort of showing how he plays. He's very fake as a character. Doc. He's very good at appearing to be on your side, and then when it all goes wrong, he's quick to bin you almost.
yeah. You get so on and so on and so I mean kind of do a follow up and kind of do a follow up interview of Yep, and it's an until agents announced of you it's a buddy event of you and I think I'm probably
We're
gonna
going to get
sound
to that in a couple of minutes.
and yeah, I'm probably gonna sound to like of a song here that's but I of
But we'll get to it quick enough. So
yeah,
we learn that
yeah,
Akers basically knew she was always sort of expendable and
yeah,
that she needed insurance. So we learn about these um, flash drives, were they?
yeah,
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 flash
yeah.
drives
So,
that that she
should I?
hidden.
But it's actually set up a PO box. Someone even his sent Emily sent them out of that and also that I'm sure that it obviously track.
Yeah, so it sort of shows that Akers knew how dangerous and a position she was in.
Yeah,
She, so it's sort of, and it gives obviously because even when Idiot comes out, he boasts, doesn't he, to Kate and Steve, like, "Oh, you had this evidence and you didn't follow up on it." So this is almost
yeah.
like back to give them something that the murder squad don't have.
I think we did that. Can from that home. Getting
You're
so
supposed to.
it's so punchable with
Yeah, that's the whole point of
okay.
Hargreaves.
And yeah, so yeah, so now Eamon goes back to her house and we don't really hear much of the arcade but you hear her husband and he hear her husband in and now and and if and come with whatever it is.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
she comes in, doesn't she? Be like, "Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I was late," and you just get the vibe that he's heard that excuse so many times.
yeah,
And you also see her little lad, don't you? Like on the
yeah,
stairs, hearing the argument, which is a bit. You go,
yeah,
"Oh, like for him."
yeah. Mhm.
So it's a bit of a like we sort of said, and I think they should have done it more a little bit. You see more of her home life and how bad her marriage is.
Yeah, yeah. And I kinda showing and I kinda showing what takes for that a bit further, but I know that's gonna come down now. And at some point, this is about me in some sort of patience, and I'm not really a
If
patient
any
person.
show will teach you patience, it is this show. And Jim, you're American, so I'm trying to think where you'd find Line of Duty. I know it's on BritBox, but you have to pay for that.
He's actually, I mean, he's actually so he, he's shot,
Oh,
and
I'm trying to think where
yeah,
he'd watch it then.
yeah. I'll put up his comment anyway, but it's easier for you to read.
It's on
Um,
iPlayer, so if you're clever, you could use that. That's all I'll say without so we don't get into trouble.
yeah, that's assuming you've got a TV
Yeah,
license. So.
I don't know. I don't know if Amazon might have it. I think I heard
Yeah, I,
Prime might have it.
yeah, Amazon, yeah, Amazon have it.
Yeah, guys, he
Um,
might not be able to access. If he's not got a license, he might not be able to watch it on iPlayer. So maybe try Prime,
yeah,
Amazon Prime,
yeah,
and see if they've got it.
yeah. Right, so moving moving on. Yeah, yeah, there's also that as well. They don't actually date the comment, but
Don't,
that's a
don't.
smart alternative.
Yeah, so now we're back to Denton with quite a
Yeah,
big story point for the episode. Hi,
okay.
PJ.
And yeah, so she gets all done by Capash, Jiddle, Yeritva, and son of whatever thought, right,
Yeah, I think it's
and
vulnerable
right,
people officer, would like in charge of all the vulnerable people in the prison.
yeah, but you know what I mean, Pastoral Neil's basic kill the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
That's what we called it up here in school, so that's the term I use basically because it's the easiest way I can describe it, and she's been told that other us had and she's been told that on us had the severe um had the severe stroke.
yeah, and that's where you learn, isn't it? When she asks about getting a visit, that on her record now, it's that she's had an altercation, and I
Yeah,
won't say the word because YouTube doesn't like it, but they think she's tried to end her existence. Let's put it that way. So, and she even
yeah,
says now, so I can't go and see her. And the woman says it's up to the governor. So it's like, it's quite a harsh moment because you could tell how desperately she wants to see her mum. And
yeah,
it's basically up to the governor and the prison whether she can go and see her or not.
yeah. So, but then we cut back to the station, and then and and then and Mickey and then Mickey the usual studies aspects of the Hastings on further and on and on further for ayıcık uzun for asteroids and the ideal ideals of obviously made them
Oh no, no, you've
this
missed something. That
uh
that basically Steve's part girlfriend, who's part of the
oh
other
yeah
squad, comes and says, I think we should basically put it on hold. And you can see Steve is like, so in
yeah
his head, he's like, right, that means you want to end it. And she goes, no. But
yeah
she basically writes down on a paper Akers' vehicle. So they go to, it
yeah
looks like an impound almost, or where they store evidence that's like cars.
yeah
And they find out that it had a tracker on it. So this means that it doesn't matter what route Denton took, even if she
yeah
got told the route or if that was her own reasoning,
yeah
the car was tracked anyway. So whatever basically happened, the group, the criminals were going to get to that vehicle. And this is a
yeah
big thing then to help to clear Denton a bit. And I think it's a
yeah
big thing for Steve to sort of in his head because he's even before sorry the girlfriend appears, he has his laptop, doesn't he? And he's got a Word
yeah
doc saying like flaws against Denton's case. So now
yeah
you're really starting to see Steve's doubting, I think.
yeah
Also, hi Cam Cam.
yeah hello can yeah and don't feel too still ready to know me with the same stupid because they've got an oh a whole stream coming out on ends. So don't feel too skilled with deep with this. And so hopefully you'll see you in the doctor.
Yeah.
Stream.
Yeah, so that's a major thing against that basically he's
Yeah,
clearing Denton a bit now that the tracker was there. and the
Yeah.
fact that major crimes, I always forget what they actually are. I think they're major crimes, aren't they? They knew about this tracker.
Age of violent I'm so
Yeah,
Hodgson's basic guild as an army a person to basically rates the ik of are on the ikin um down in the news.
yeah. So then once that's been revealed, we then get to them actually, they've gone through the flash drives and we get what a big, quite an important video that was on them. No problem, Dave.
Yeah, and obviously only the written share so we hear from him in the after idea video and he's basically saying and many basically saying all this being and so that you know birthdays and past until it's been doing and 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 it's been doing a job in the inside for
Well,
on years.
he starts talking about
Yeah,
immunity, doesn't he? And
yeah,
that that's what he was promised, and that's why he's angry that he thinks that's being taken from him. And he's talking about two people. He's talking about the
but
two-faced B-word,
yeah.
and considering that
It's
it's
alright,
about
Shelby.
immunity.
It's
Well, no,
alright.
that's
I
why.
just basically said that.
Yeah, but that's why I have you. You can say swear words because you're Scottish.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he's talking about the guy who's basically sounds like promised him immunity and is now
yeah,
going back on their word, and the caddy, and that's when Matthew. That's where we see a very interesting reaction from Dot. But before we get to the caddy stuff, it's very heavily. They think, don't they, that he's talking about Dryden because Dryden did a press
yeah.
conference.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. Back up a minute. I did address a comment. Yeah. Well, like, Akante's basically, Akante's basically is the sort of guy that will, looks after a girl for first of obviously basically in advises and advises him the best kill up um to basically using a particular part of the of course I can't believe you know what helped that term.
To be fair, if you've never watched golf on telly, I know it just because my dad watches. So I
Oh
know by proxy what a caddy is. So
yeah,
now you know, Matthew, think about what we've told you what a caddy is and think about what the caddy could be doing in the police force.
yeah, and they already know who and you already know who the cat there is because remember Tommy actually he said that then did the thing I'll
And I
be
told you
saying
guys
yeah
it was going to come back, didn't I? I said that's not just a
yeah
one off shock moment, that thread, and now it's come back. And now you're
yeah
starting to see why that thread's important.
yeah
But the more link that's more to the current case is they think Dryden is this backstabber, this person who Tommy's talking about
yeah
because he. I know, don't you,
yeah
Matthew?
yeah and yeah well this channel's becoming educated. It's no and right well yeah and so and so yeah so it's like a press conference from the week before, and Dryden talks about a permanent offend of space.
Yeah, and sort of people who don't deserve immunity is the sort of hint. He's not even hinting, he's being quite blunt. He's saying, like, the taxpayers pay for these people, they get protection, and they're sort of vile scum, they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, Dot's face is very interesting. And I think he's a bit too obvious, almost a little bit, the actor, with his reaction when he hears Caddy.
Yeah, but like, how did that chocolate say that it was very well acted?
I know he's acting well, but I think maybe it's because we know who he is. But for me, it's a little like Matthew says, his eyes literally sort of for a second panic almost.
So he's Houston says Gemma, so Houston actually says right, we need to get to the bottom of it. Yes, and then Orton says Gemma made the party. He told look at that
Not
so
suspicious at all.
so he's trying to do this unpin that side of the investigation. So we'll see how that unfolds in the next two review. In the next two review, because it doesn't really get touched upon again in the surface. So
Yeah, and he also importantly says any evidence linked with the caddy, bring it to me. So he's very much almost squaring that off so he can control it.
Yeah.
So, and now we have more evidence in regards to Denton, and her claims starts to crop up.
Yeah. So I'm not about it's for it's for all history and a high percentage of all that so we have to have involved in July. And so then so then take the all history to Hastings and then the show format.
Yeah, and you can see now. I think Hastings is starting to realise he can't protect Dryden. Dryden's too much in the thick of it now, because it's not just the phone calls. She claimed that there were witnesses of them together, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So that's starting now to be seen as, oh, there is witnesses. So it's sort of the combination of those two things. So it's like, yeah, Dryden's in the thick of this now.
So then we enter the and we go to the so and we go to the interview um and it's been called the for all what have you to be asked about our relationship with um Jedi.
Yeah, and Hastings is very cagey, isn't he, with her?
Yeah, and he's one's a bit sort of snarky and a bit sort of fiery and this interview. He's a bit more sort of and
Bit nicey, isn't he, usually?
uh,
And that's because you can see he's panicking.
Yeah.
Because they thought they had Denton to rights, and like the more and more evidence is coming out now that she isn't as involved as, or it looks like she isn't as involved
Yeah.
as they initially thought.
Yeah.
So it's, and even like you can see Kate and Stephen sort of giving him looks, aren't they, near the end of like, why are you acting like this?
Yeah. So so the so when she gets on a visit to the care home to go and visit
Oh no,
and
you've skipped loads.
uh,
On or
uh,
have you? Maybe you haven't, and I just didn't write it down. Maybe that is next.
yeah,
Maybe that is, and I just didn't write it down because I didn't think I needed to. Could be that.
yeah, and they can kind of see that on was in a bad tone, and this is a side that as and this is a side that his character that you can empathize with that kind of thing.
Yeah, because obviously
Mhm.
when you heard a stroke, you didn't know how severe. But once you actually
Yeah,
see her mum, it is
yeah,
quite a sort of. It's one of those hard scenes again, isn't it? Almost because she
yeah,
can understand, but she can't talk. And like the woman, the actress they've got, you buy that this has happened, and it's sort of you can see how much it affects Denton.
yeah. I mean, it just actually shows the quality actress on on actual yes, because she's hard quality in the series of all, but yet you kind of see that she has a good actress at the same time as well. Even though she didn't really get all that much material in the series.
Oh, Matthew, that's a bit harsh.
Oh, what the? Oh, they only need to put this up there. Oh, gee. Oh,
Keep it for Wednesday stream.
yeah, please keep it for the Wednesday stream because I have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So now we go back to the more Stephen Kate side because another
yeah,
quick scene. Kate is now staying in a hotel, so we can
yeah,
guess the result of her argument with her husband that she's no longer at the house.
yeah,
And then they're starting to look at Dryden's movements now, aren't they? And where he was on certain nights.
yeah. Yeah, so because basically, it's discovered that they're getting details of the whole hotels and stuff like that, like driving and getting the so the walls are sort of closing in and July in a bit here as well.
Yeah, but and there's a certain night, isn't there, that now they're
Yeah,
starting to focus in on.
yeah, oh yeah, the night that and the night that Carl he went missing.
Yeah, because like I said, this is the fun of notes. Yeah, because Kate goes to see Carly's parents, doesn't she?
Yeah, well, us, my parents, but yeah. Mhm.
So, and because I'm trying to, this is the fun of notes. Thought this would help me. Yeah, so first she goes to see her that and just says, "Sorry, like I'm having to bother you just because we're looking
Yeah,
back into the case almost." And
yeah,
that's when they start to tell her, don't they,
yeah,
about what happened when the police came to visit them about Carly going missing,
yeah,
and that a lone police officer came. to collect Carly's things that have DNA traces on.
Yeah.
And Kate sort of says like that doesn't follow procedure. Like that should have been put in a logbook. They should have been a forensics officer with them.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have just been a lone like police officer. So now you're starting to see that Carly, there were hints, wasn't there, that she was connected to all this?
Yeah, and she's involved with a battle. You saw basically,
Yeah,
it's all starting to tie together. And
yes.
also, like, how Emin asks, are you able to, are you two able to come and in this nation with me to help identify the police officer, and they end up going to the station to
Yeah,
and
because when Kate then phones up, she
yeah,
realised that Carly's DNA wasn't like there was nothing
yeah,
extracted for DNA, which if it's a missing
yeah,
person, they're gonna want DNA to match to a database, but
yeah,
magically that's all disappeared. So now you're really starting to think who doesn't want Carly found, isn't it, at this point? Who's trying to make sure that even if a body pops up, that it can't
yeah.
be identified almost.
So then, right, so then, and stood up people and the arts to them, and to them, use the home, but she's the up to over because and as almost and yeah, as for
Yeah, and
that,
the nicest, it's not a nice because of the, but it's a cleverly done scene where the
yeah,
guards are asleep, aren't they?
yeah,
And the nurse comes in and keeps the door open by accident, and
yeah,
Denton can see the front door has been left open because somebody's
yeah,
like delivering food, aren't they? Like a fella comes in,
yeah,
and
and
she
she
sort of
kind of
has a moment
hesitates.
to be
Yeah,
like, I could run, I could get out, but then she looks at her mum,
yeah,
and you can see in that moment that she's like, no, my mum's more important than even her own
yeah,
freedom, which says a lot about Denton.
yeah,
So yeah, they're putting her back in the van, and then once it's travelled for a little bit, she starts to get restless, doesn't she?
yeah, and she and she's I can basically I to my mama, reach me back, reach me back so that I can tell her the
Yeah, and they're just not taking her on out. They're just like, beep, yeah, we're not listening to you.
yeah. I think yeah, and all this and then and all this that was just before the van sort of episode over, um and you can hear um and you can hear the incident take place. You don't actually see the accident actually happening, but you hear it because the camera's in the piece of it.
Yeah, it's basically from Denton's perspective, isn't it? The shot, and that's
Yeah,
actually I think we don't. Now and again we'll talk about it, but I think the directing. I don't know who
yeah,
directed this episode, but there's really clever shots in this program.
yeah,
That it's like because you almost think it's because of Denton pressing a button, don't you? Because she
yeah,
like presses it 10 times once she's clicked they're ignoring her, so you think, oh god, has she like made the woman veer off?
Yeah.
That's your first thought because of the way it's shot and because of what's happening in the scene.
But actually, William, yeah, Matthew puts it here in the chat, will just highlight it.
Well, that's what
Yeah,
I think that's what it's trying to make you think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's sort of the trick of that's what the initial way it's shot. But then once she gets out the van, you realise what made it go off the road.
Interesting, he's a very good director for the actual.
Yeah, because she gets out, doesn't she? And after like basically, I don't know how she didn't injure herself because it's like on the side, isn't it? And she's like basically chucks herself out of the cage she's in.
Yeah. And so basically says, and she basically says, so she basically says to the big aunt and it's conscious, oh, and oh, and video and so and so and and brought it into the big space.
Well, before she runs into the woods, you see a car, don't you?
Yeah,
Like a Land Rover that is in front.
but it's in eyes, it's an old CG and
That this was an accident on purpose. Now you're thinking.
Because presumably it's one power. He'd injured to make a car who assumed whether to do with the OCG, given what they already know, what we already know about them as an organisation.
Yeah, so now we go back to the parents and Kate.
Yeah. And like being asked to so being asked how to define and give it it is Asian so for all the Asian officers in the force was to try and determine who it is and Eric or it's still like the officers almost didn't know which
Oh, hi, John.
and so it's the two scenes are happening at the exact same or and at the exact same point, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's sort of purposely you go, oh yeah, I'm about to see, but then it just stops, doesn't it, before the final photo, and then you see Denton in the forest hiding, and then you hear some voices, and one of them you might recognise Doctor Who fans.
Yeah, and it's but I would aware that because yeah, actors and Sasha do. And and I have to and I have to say his part in this episode so quite good. He'll keep and get out on show today I go show one of our uninformable favorite TV show. I bet you think that you and an absolute to be honest, because when you look at the um, there's and look at the dialogue he's been given and the way that he acts in this scene actually tells me that he has on screen presence because during series 1 of her, I didn't really see any sort of potential. Yeah, but now I'm watching something with some decent dialogue and I understand that he has presence.
Yeah, and it's a clever way because obviously they're shouting, "Oh, we're the police! Like we're gonna help you!" Like, and Denton, you can tell she thinks, "Oh God, like I'm saved." And
Yeah,
Sasha and the other actor, they do play it like they're very sort of, "Oh, thank God you're okay, Mom. Like we're gonna look after you."
yeah,
But then, sort of, if you've remembered any of the little things that have been said about Carly's partner or any sort of hints, it should
yeah,
start to have warning bells going off in your head a bit. But
yeah,
obviously, once you start to see them interact with Denton, then it does go back to the parents,
yeah,
and then the dad basically says that's him, and it's Sasha.
yeah,
So it just sort of does show that Sasha can act with this sort of thing of pretending to be something he's not almost. And
yeah,
they've got
exactly. I mean, yeah, sorry for could have just show what yeah, exactly. Matthew, it just shows you that it just shows you that our wonderful show or how much of a black he
well, if
is.
anything, it
Yeah,
does show that Sasha has got such a good like level of acting. He can even rise above Chibnall dialogue in all sense.
yeah,
But yeah, you don't obviously.
mhm,
But it was so funny because I purposely didn't tell you, did I? I was like, I'm not going to spoil that for him. So
yeah,
when you watched the episode and you were like, oh God, it's Sasha. I was like, yep, a younger one. He looks a little bit baby faced in this, but
yeah,
it's funny because I obviously, like I said, I watched this in a binge. So
yeah,
I'd seen him first as the master. And like I could see in that he was a decent enough actor, but just the portrayal was doing my head in. So I watched him in this and I was like, oh, I'm
yeah,
so like annoyed now,
yeah,
like you are. But yeah,
yeah,
so we're getting to
yeah.
sort of that's the big, and then once Sasha's been identified, that's by the way, folks, that's what I'm going to refer to him as because it's hard for me not to. Then
Yeah.
you start to then
He's
then
And his character name's managed the Sard, but Charlotte's gets a in the brain now, so yeah. So by the way, folks, just to let you know, it's Manny who's preferred his character.
I'm just going to
And
refer
then,
to the character as Sasha.
yeah, yeah, but just for, but just for the irony of Christmas in the chat though.
I know. Um, but then
Yeah,
but then it starts to but then Kate sort of isn't she starting to put a few things together
yeah.
and then she looks over at the EFIT, doesn't she?
Yeah, and then she's like, oh shit. And
Well, yeah,
yeah,
because also um CCTV footage is being reviewed, isn't it? That's what Steve's doing and Dot's doing while Kate's talking with the parents.
and and it's and it's basically with this big important conference where you see they see and Sasha you doing it now with them and his and his partner basically and Gerard, you know, having a conversation.
looking very pally, aren't they? Like they know each other. So then Steve's like, "Oh God, like we've got Dryden," and then Kate's like, "It's worse. He's he's the officer that took the DNA, and the other one matches the E-fit."
Yeah. But hold on a minute. But right, he paused the he paused the CCTV who's the kid sits in the middle with the screen. We saw all the dominoes are starting to fall and it appear. But when we come back to um so then we cut back to Sasha and the general cool guy and and did you see an out and so and you see an out and like and looking assessing well what's going on here.
Yeah, and
She's a
she also
yeah,
says like this will look bad on me, so you have to
yeah,
do it like through the right protocol
yeah,
that she's sort of saying as well.
yeah. But like and today basically and shit offer and just I often the episode ends. Yeah,
Well, also quite cleverly, while she's screaming, police cars go by, don't they? So the siren
yeah,
covers over her screams
yeah.
because she is going for it in the back of this car. So if anybody normally were to go past the car, they probably would hear her.
Yeah. Alright, so guys, come on, can we before we wrap up, what I'm just was for episode.
Oh, and Matthew, this was God. How many? Like this was quite a few years ago. So this was way before Sasha
Yeah,
got the role that currently we know him for.
yeah. Series two in the Detective Police in 2004. I've done my research with
That's what I
this.
mean. He looks so young.
Yeah.
He's
Uh,
probably only in his early 20s. Well, God, I don't know how old Sasha is now, actually.
yeah, he's actually, well, he's 7.
Oh, he was
And
probably in his early 20s then when he was in this.
according to Wikipedia, anyway, but,
This,
that,
so,
so, well, Sadako gives it a 9 out of 10. And, on score, and, after a big series to find out what you would get. So I need to,
thank you for joining, Jim. It's nice to see you in the chat.
yes, thanks for joining. And uh, so keep this course coming. We would be it and then adventure in space and time by then. Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Oh,
Um,
yes, actually. Yeah, I always forget he's in that as the director.
so, and so, and so, um, already gets a 9 out of 10. After gets an 8 out of 10. I'd be curious, and I'd be curious to find out why this isn't a higher score master. That's interesting to do.
I think
Honest.
there's a little bit of setup here. But that's what you sort of, like I
Yeah,
said, last episode was the big almost like shocks. And I think
yeah,
this is sort of, it's turned down a tiny bit. And a lot of it is, like I said, it's getting these threads that you weren't sure if they were important or not. And if basically the Carly stuff, like that sort of was sort of treated as its own little thing, separate almost to everything, and now it's fully been brought into the fold with everything else.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of setup here for the rest of the series. It feels like.
So Charlotte and so Charlotte, it's asked to Rodriguez and that's episode.
Well, I gave last time 9 out of 9.5, and I think because the last episode was so good, I don't think I can give it that same mark, but I'm not going to knock it down by much, so I think I'll give this a 9 because I do quite.
You can continue. Sorry, I'll have to stop doing. What are you going to
Just the two of us, we'll be fine. No, I really quite like this focus on Hastings because he has sort of been in the background a bit with hints. So I think Adrian is just, the more he's in this show, the more. See you later, PD. The more he's sort of in the show, and the more Jed gives Adrian to do, the more you really see the skill of Adrian and sort of how he can do layered quite well. I quite like how sort of. I think this episode is a nice one to watch a couple of times actually, because you start to see then all the little clues about Carly, about the boyfriend, about sort of the police with the corrupt police officers, with Dryden even, like there's a lot of little things. And as we know in telly, it's such a hard thing to have this sort of clever plot which does all interweave and does actually have actual bits that don't feel like they come out of nowhere. So I think this is a really good episode for that. And the sort of the reveal of sort of, I think the ending is a very also good setup for the next episode. It really does make you sort of think, oh God, what's going to happen next week?
See, for me though, I'll give it another episode to be honest, because I think it was well and you're starting to actually you see this story threads come together and make sense now, which is
That's why we knocked it down to 9.
Really enjoyed. Yeah, so I'm gonna give it arcs and Sasha Devan's performance was exceptional for the wee bit he had in the episode, and he proved me wrong because this is actually right for Ashley going back to see something really good with Ariel because his material was just absolutely shite.
Well, yeah, because I would say to Daniel, like, oh, if Chibnall had any sense, he would have cast him as 13. Yeah. And Daniel would have been quite like, you would say to me, like, no, he wouldn't be a good doctor.
Yeah.
Or you don't understand why I'm like, if he had to choose an actor, he should have gone with Sasha. And now I think you're starting to see a bit of that.
Yep. Yeah. But so basically, I'm going to turn it over to Charlotte to get her and shoutouts and stuff. So who's anyway appearing on this week?
Well, what I know is that usually you'll see me on the TARDIS show because we've had a bit of news lately. So there's been a few streams I've been on there recently. Last week on Tuesday, Dan from the Spacebook let me talk Comic-Con, and that was a fun stream. So now and again you'll see me on Dan's channel, and sort of he's a lovely bloke as well, and he's just hit actually 600 plus subs. So well done, Dan, to that. You really do deserve it. And those are the stuff I know about, and I will be appearing on Script Doctors sometime soon, I think.
And obviously on Wednesday night 7 p.m. We have a Doctor Who special, which is appropriately titled "And the Karen Chapman Go on A New Hope Kill." In March. So yeah, and we got a very special guest and panelists on, so to find out who our panelists are, because it's a 4-person panel, so to find out who the other 2 panelists are, tune in. I am in is 7 p.m. Everybody's channel that we're associated with um, along with the soundtrack to the as always, and we will catch you Wednesday night at 7 p.m. where we discuss the all out from constipated skin is a bit can actually use that catchphrase, because
It is your catchphrase.
it's probably going to be the last time I use that.
Oh no, she's not gone till 2022. There's plenty of time for you to use that.
Yeah, and obviously, Canada is still on hacker on as well. Unfortunately, with people really and for in the space between from the time this zone I'm going is after the series. Yeah,
I'm going to suffer through series 13 as well.
haha.
So I can actually talk about it and not just say, "Oh, I did watch the last bit of it."
Enjoy. I'm sure you do. We'll have a very fun on 10 and everything's all sunshine and rain.
Oh, you know you'll be getting like messages from me like, "Daniel, I need to vent."
Yeah. Yeah, so, we'll see you Wednesday night. Thanks for all the support. As always, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to the YouTube. I shan't basically
Yeah,
like it, unsubscribe all you
and also make
guys
sure
for a
you
time.
do like, because apparently they wiped a load of them last stream and then put them back. So make
Yeah.
sure you've done a like that you did, because YouTube apparently wants to now wipe likes.
So from me and Charlie, it's good night and see you all in the Doctor Who special.
Yep, have a good one, folks, and I might have a bit of a treat for everybody on that stream as well.
Yeah.